I heard that AJ was carried out the ring. We knew that was rubbish. He got hit by a shot and they carried on the spar. Sort of tells you everything, really. You know, AJ's flattened numerous sparring partners, you know, in the last couple of camps. And it's just what happened.
Joey Mills here for The Sportsman. I'm sat down with Eddie Hearn as we look ahead to Anthony Joshua as he prepares to take on IBF heavyweight champion Daniel Dubois at Wembley this weekend. Eddie, how are you doing?
Doing great, thank you, mate. Very excited.
This IBF route is one that you've been looking at for a while for Anthony, going back to when Filip Hrgović was the number one contender. But are you glad that it's ended up being Daniel Dubois, considering that an all-British fight is always a huge occasion?
Yeah, I mean, looking at the Dubois-Hrgović fight, I think I would have preferred the Hrgović fight. But, you know, I think in terms of the moment for British boxing, two Brits for the World Heavyweight Championship in front of 96,000 people. You know, I think it's a great fight. And like you said, the IBF, Hrgović was mandatory for so long that when AJ beat Otto Wallin, who was the next in line, he leapfrogged him. And then obviously when Dubois beat Hrgović, you know, the two just came together and we get this fantastic fight at Wembley.
And obviously, it's such a huge fight. Everyone's got something to say about it. Anthony Fowler recently came out and said that AJ had his legs stiffened in a sparring session with Dubois going back many years now to when Dubois was a teenager. With that in mind, how risky is this fight for Joshua?
Yeah, I mean, when I first heard the rumours, I heard that AJ was carried out the ring. You know, we knew that was rubbish. But, you know, the fact that he got hit by a shot and they carried on the spar sort of tells you everything, really. But it's not unusual to get buzzed by a huge punch in heavyweight. I mean, these guys, you know, AJ's flattened numerous sparring partners, you know, in the last couple of camps. And it's just what happens. I mean, they're all huge punchers. And Dubois is very dangerous. You know, he's definitely a guy that can crack. You know, he's got a good work rate. He's young. And AJ's been in with all different styles in the sport. You know, he's been in with punchers of the same ilk as Daniel Dubois. But, you know, he's prepared appropriately for a very tough challenge.
And do you think it is perhaps the toughest challenge that he's had since the Usyk fight? He's been on an incredible run of victory since that defeat. Do you think Dubois is the toughest man that he's faced so far?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think every of those challenges, firstly, when you go back to Jermaine Franklin, you know, a smaller heavyweight that moves well. Hellenius was kind of late notice for that fight. But then when you look at the Wallin and the Ngannou wins, you know, I feel like when you deal with people very easily, it's after the fact that people tell you that wasn't really a challenge. You know, going into the Otto Wallin fight, you've got this really awkward southpaw who's just went to Russia and beat Gassiev, gave Tyson Fury fits in his fight, you know, and then AJ just makes it a complete mismatch. And it's like, well, it was only Otto Wallin. You know, Francis Ngannou, who in my opinion beat Tyson Fury, dropped him, you know, whatever way you want to look at it, it was a fight that could have gone either way. AJ demolishes him and it's only Francis Ngannou who's an MMA fighter. So every fight has different kind of challenges, but you know, Dubois is definitely a stern test. And coming off a couple of good wins, you know, I think the key to this fight is both guys are in tremendous form and full of confidence. And that's why I think it lends itself to being a great fight.
And there's been a lot of talk about the championship on the line for this. Obviously, Dubois' IBF heavyweight championship that very recently belonged to Usyk. Do you view the winner of this fight as a legitimate world heavyweight champion, or ultimately do they still have to go and fight Usyk?
Absolutely. I mean, anyone that holds the belt, you know, one of the four belts is a legitimate world champion. But the fact remains is that, you know, Alexander Usyk had to fight Filip Hrgović for a long, long time. But the IBF kept allowing him to have all these fights. And I'm glad they did, because they allowed the undisputed fight to take place. But they allowed that fight on the basis that the winner of Dubois against Hrgović would have to fight Alexander Usyk next, with no exceptions. And obviously, once that's over, they're just keeping to their rules. So Usyk chose not to fight Dubois, obviously, because he has the Fury rematch. So the belt goes up in the air. And, you know, I think when you look at the guys who are fighting for it, absolutely. that this fight deserves to be for the world heavyweight title. You know, Dubois fought Usyk for the world heavyweight title, gave a decent account of himself, has come back, beat Miller, beat Hrgovic. You know, Hrgovic was the interim world champion. So, yeah, he deserves, you know, the only thing I will say is I think this is the fight where Daniel Dubois should attempt to become world heavyweight champion. He was elevated to full champion. And I don't like that route. Do you know what I mean? Like, if he beats AJ, fair play, you're world heavyweight champion. But is he world heavyweight champion now? He is on paper, but I view this as a vacant championship fight, in my opinion.
And as a promoter, is the ideal scenario here, AJ beats Dubois, Fury beats Usyk, and you put on the British undisputed heavyweight title fight that I think we've all wanted for a number of years? Is that the ideal roadmap for you going forward?
Yeah, I mean, you know, everyone's always talked about that Fury fight, and I think it happens, whatever happens on the 21st and of September and December. But in an ideal world, AJ wins that fight against Dubois and Fury beats Usyk in the rematch, and then you've got the biggest fight in the history of sport, or of the sport. So yeah, all our focus is just on September 21st, and then it'll be over to Tyson Fury to try and deliver the goods.
And there's somebody that's going to be present at Wembley that everyone has been talking about for the last few weeks. That is, of course, Mr. Liam Gallagher himself. I wonder, there has been speculation. Is there a possibility that his brother might turn up with him and we might get that Oasis?
No, I doubt it. You know, I think Oasis have got their own plans to start that reunion. But, you know, if there was anyone to deliver it, I would say it was Turki Al-Sheikh. So I'm sure those conversations have been had, but my guess would be that Oasis will be starting their reunion for their tour.
And you mentioned Turki Al-Sheikh there, someone who is committed to delivering the very best fights out there. He's met a little bit of resistance from someone that you know very well and have worked with in Canelo recently, where Turki wants to put on fights like Canelo against Crawford. He's looking at Canelo against Benavidez. Do you think we get to those fights? And if they do happen, do you think they'll take place in Saudi Arabia?
Yeah, you know, they're both huge fights. I think that His Excellency has got a vision to make the biggest fights in the sport, and probably gets a little bit frustrated when he can't. You know, it doesn't matter the depths of the budget. Sometimes not everything is possible, but it helps a lot. Canelo Alvarez is fighting, you know, principally for money at this stage in his career. So if the money's right, you'll see him fight anybody.
And just finally, I wanted to ask for ultimately your prediction for Anthony Joshua against Daniel Dubois, IBF Heavyweight Championship at Wembley. How do you see that fight going?
I think it'll be a firefight. You know, if Dubois comes out aggressively, I think it could be over early. And with that in mind, I'll go for Anthony Joshua inside 3 rounds.